Welcome back to the Crypto World channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is starting to recover some short-term bullish momentum, which we need to pay attention to as the price is continuing to be drawn towards this major level of liquidity as one of the largest whales in the world just bought more Bitcoin, which I'll talk about in just a moment, alongside Solana now running into a very crucial level on the price chart, alongside XRP also running into a critical level on the price chart. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, taking a look at some Bitcoin news today, because Michael Saylor just once again announced that Strategy, previously known as MicroStrategy, has bought more Bitcoin. This time, they bought almost 2,000 Bitcoin, 1,955 Bitcoin for over $200 million US at an average price of just above $111,000 per Bitcoin. And so this brings up Strategy, or previously known as MicroStrategy, this brings up their total up to 638,460 Bitcoin that this company's Strategy is currently holding. And so obviously this is worth billions upon billions of dollars. They acquired this amount of Bitcoin in total for around 47 billion, but it's currently worth a lot more than that 47 billion. And as I've explained many times here on the channel, over the longer term, this can cause a major supply squeeze, essentially forcing the price of Bitcoin towards the upside if this buying or demand ultimately continues. And obviously that's due to the fact that the supply of Bitcoin is strictly limited. It has a scarce supply, max supply of 21 million Bitcoin, but obviously out of that 21 million, there's still roughly a million left to be mined. There's also still roughly a million estimated to be held by Satoshi, and a few million estimated to be lost forever, and probably another few million in the hands of Bitcoin holders that are not planning to sell anytime soon. And so realistically, there's probably only a few million Bitcoin, give or take, that are relatively liquid that can be bought and sold on the market. And so obviously this is getting to quite a large portion of the available supply of Bitcoin held by Strategy. And a lot of beginners into crypto, beginners into investing, thinks that a $200 million buy order pumps the market cap by just 200 million, but that's not at all how it works. It works on simple supply and demand. And so for example, if there's large buyers like this wanting to buy a lot of Bitcoin, but then let's just say if there's no sellers at the current price, the next person that wants to sell their Bitcoin is asking for say $1,000 above the current price, then the price of Bitcoin has to go $1,000 towards the upside to get towards where that next seller is selling their Bitcoin for this buy order to actually be processed. And so ultimately, with less and less Bitcoin being available to be sold on the market in the supply of Bitcoin and ending up in hands of MicroStrategy and things like this, obviously over the longer term, this can force the price of Bitcoin towards the upside as there's less available Bitcoin to be sold and more Bitcoin being basically locked away. But I want to make this clear, when I'm talking about a supply squeeze here, I'm talking about over the very long term, as in many years from now, over the next 5 to 10 years, it's very likely Bitcoin will head much higher than the current prices over the super long term. Once again, this is not an overnight thing. But with that being said, taking a look at this Bitcoin price chart on the weekly time frame, currently the super trend indicator is still sitting in the green, indicating a larger bull market. And of course, on this weekly Bitcoin price chart, technically we still have a bearish divergence, which is technically still active. And so even though on slightly smaller time frames, yes, we could see short-term bullish moves, short-term bullish reliefs and things like that, at least as of right now, when we're talking about say the next 1 month, give or take, it's unlikely we'll necessarily see a major high momentum movement above the all-time highs, simply due to the fact that we're playing out a massive bearish divergence. And of course, the last couple of bearish divergences that played out on the weekly Bitcoin price chart ultimately resulted in either a bit of choppy sideways price action and then a pullback, or basically just a pullback over a period of weeks, if not months. And obviously so far, it's been about 1 month for this playing out. But if we're taking a look at the 3-day Bitcoin price chart, as I've mentioned recently here on the channel in my last couple of videos, obviously we're starting to move towards a possible bullish crossover in the 3-day Bitcoin MACD, slowly starting to regain some bullish momentum just in the shorter term. Remember, the bigger picture still looking neutral to bearish, lacking bullish momentum on the larger time frames over a period of weeks, if not months. But during, for example, this larger pullback or larger cool off on the larger time frames, once again, we can see little short-term bullish recoveries like this along the way towards the downside or during a larger sideways price range. For example, obviously a sideways price range is made up of bullish and bearish moves. And so it's quite possible we're on one of those shorter term bullish moves right now as we've already seen over the last few days, obviously, but now starting to pick up a little bit more momentum and could likely head a little bit higher just in the short term, once again, in the next few days or so, maybe over the next 1 week. And if we're taking a look at the daily Bitcoin price chart, obviously it's a similar situation here, still bouncing from this major area of support that I've already been talking about since these lows back down here in between around 106.7k to 107.6k. So that's still acting as strong support. And we also have this level of resistance sitting at roughly around 113.5k. And once we can finally see a confirmed breakout above 113.5k, that would be extremely bullish, at least in the short term. For the following days, maybe the following week, would likely see a move at least up towards around 117,000 if we first confirm a breakout above 113,500. And if we're taking a look at the shorter term here on the 4-hour time frame, as I said in my last video, no longer rely on this bearish divergence. Obviously, I warned about this bearish divergence back around here, saying that over the next 1 day or so, we'll likely see a continued slight little pullback, and obviously that perfectly played out. But then right around here, when I recorded my last video just yesterday, I said no longer rely on the bearish divergence. We're likely now going to see a little bit more of a bullish relief over the next couple of days. And obviously, since I said that yesterday, that's exactly already playing out as predicted. And so we're actually now beginning to form and confirm a new short-term bullish trend. Remember, understand the difference between the different time frames. The bigger picture still pointing towards a larger cool off, not necessarily a bear market, but ultimately kind of just cooling off, lacking bullish momentum. But in the immediate short term, looking at the very short term moves, the short term trends, obviously for the last few weeks or so, for almost a month, we were in a bit of a short term bearish trend from around mid-August towards basically the end of August, so for a couple of weeks here. But we've now technically formed some higher lows and starting to form some higher highs in the price of Bitcoin just on the 4-hour time frame. So once again, this is pointing towards a short-term bullish relief or short-term bullish trend, which could likely continue in the coming days. But remember, we have some key resistance right here at around 113,000, really in between 113,000 to 113.5k. But then once we finally break out above that level, if we break out above that level with confirmation, so candle closes above that level, the next major target would be at roughly 117,000. And as I've also been talking about for almost a week now on the channel, since basically back around here, we also have a possible inverse head and shoulders pattern, as we could see for the price of Bitcoin just in the shorter term, but that would only actually confirm if we see a confirmed breakout, once again, ideally at least above 113,000, ideally above 113.5k, with once again the price target at around 117,000 for that inverse head and shoulders pattern. And if we're taking a quick look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, we can see that right now we still have a lot of liquidity just above the price of Bitcoin. Like I talked about in my last video, this is sitting at roughly around $114,000 per Bitcoin. And so once again, that was one of the major reasons that I said in my last video that we're likely going to see a little bit more of a short-term bullish relief, which obviously over the last 1 day perfectly played out as predicted. And this is why I'm continuing to predict a little bit more of a short-term bullish relief. Once again, on the larger timeframes, like the weekly timeframe, we're not necessarily seeing massive high momentum towards the upside like what we saw previously on the larger timeframes when we're talking about the bigger moves in the price of Bitcoin, but just in the short term, expect a little bit more of a bullish move. And so overall, those are my predictions, those are my expectations in the shorter term, and looking at the bigger picture, and of course the key levels to watch out for on the price chart. And if you want to trade any of these moves or get set up ready to go to take the next trading opportunity here for the price of Bitcoin or any other crypto, you have to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And personally, I take a lot of my crypto trades over on BTNX, so I'll make sure to leave a link to BTNX below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can claim some massive bonuses. For example, up to 25,000 USDT in trading bonuses here, simply just by trading crypto using that link. So if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check this out. Once again, first link below this video to take advantage of these major bonuses here that are only available using that link. And in case you're wondering, BTNX is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want BTNX as an exchange, there's also Pinex as another exchange out there that I also trade on. So I'll also make sure to leave a link to Pinex below this video. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page where you could also claim some massive bonuses. For example, if you simply just make an account, takes about 60 seconds to do this, make an account, complete KYC, you get a free $50 bonus from the exchange onto your Pinex account. And there's also deposit bonuses here. For example, if you deposit just $100, you get a $100 bonus, or if you deposit $10,000, you get a $1,000 bonus onto your Pinex account. But remember, all of these major bonuses here are only available if you're using the link below this video to actually make your Pinex account. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can access Pinex without KYC as well. But with that being said, taking a look at the Bitcoin dominance on the 3-day time frame, and in the immediate short term, we're kind of just bouncing around relatively sideways, not really showing a lot of momentum to either direction, but technically still within the larger bearish price structure. And so obviously, as I've been saying for a long time now on the channel, while the Bitcoin dominance continues the much larger pullback, if we're talking about, say, the next few weeks or so, this is still obviously bearish for the Bitcoin dominance, which is good news for the altcoin market. But from time to time, we do see little bounces here and there during the larger pullback. And while we're seeing those short-term bounces in the Bitcoin dominance, that's not good for altcoins. So in other words, altcoins technically overall still looking more bullish than Bitcoin on average. Not every altcoin, but a lot of the major altcoins, that's still the case while the Bitcoin dominance is dumping like this. But then during the dump, obviously, we see little setbacks for the altcoin market. And if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the 3-day time frame, right now Ethereum is still bouncing around in the same sideways price range as I've been saying here on the channel since basically 2 weeks ago, roughly 2 weeks ago. I've been saying expect a lot of choppy sideways price action in this range here. And in case you're new to the channel, this area of support for the sideways price range is sitting in between around 3.9k to 4.1k, and this area of resistance is sitting in between around 4.8k to 4.9k. So overall, expect a lot of bounces, expect a lot of support in that area of support, and rejections from that area of resistance, ultimately just staying range bound, at least for now. And if we're taking a look at this daily Ethereum price chart, technically speaking, this bearish divergence is still currently active, which means we should not necessarily be expecting significant bullish momentum. Now, with that being said, that does not mean a major crash in the price. In fact, for the most part, over the last 1 week or so, we've basically just been bouncing around really sideways, looking very neutral in the immediate short term. So this could likely continue maybe over the next day or so, but not too much longer, maybe a couple of days. But say in a week from now, I do expect pretty much the end of this bearish divergence. And if, for example, Bitcoin between now and a week from now continues more of a bullish relief, especially in the next few days, if we break out above ideally 113 to 113.5k, above this level right here for the price of Bitcoin, especially if the Bitcoin dominance continues a little bit of a drop, that would really help Ethereum with finally a little bit more of a bullish move in the short term, maybe in a couple of days from now. And so ultimately, that is still the situation for Ethereum as it is right now, but definitely pay attention to not just the Bitcoin dominance, but also the price of Bitcoin, because as we're approaching a very critical level for the price of Bitcoin, this is a make or break moment, at least in the short term for the following days, which can affect a lot of the altcoin market as well. And if we're taking a look at Solana on the 2-day time frame, obviously right now Solana is continuing the larger bullish trend. Clearly, as I've been saying the entire time, the price structure is still technically bullish. Obviously, we're forming higher lows and higher highs, for example, which is by definition a bullish trend. And obviously from time to time, we do see little breaks, setbacks, pauses during the bullish trends. It's not a straight line, but the trend is still bullish. And right now, we're simply continuing the bullish trend, testing these highs, which could act as some resistance, sitting at roughly around 216, give or take. But if we break out above these previous highs, in that situation, the next major target will be sitting at roughly $230. And as for support, I'd expect a lot of support in this area, exactly where we've been bouncing from over the last 1 to 2 weeks as expected, and that's sitting in between around 190 to 200. And if we're taking a look at this 12-hour Solana price chart, as of recording this video, the price of Solana is now testing this ascending line of resistance, sitting at approximately $217. And so once again, it's possible we could find some short-term resistance around 217, 218, but if we now see a breakout above this level, especially with confirmed candle closes above ideally $218 and holding above this level, in that situation, that would effectively invalidate this rising wedge. Technically, it would confirm the breakout, which technically confirms a small price target. But with that being said, statistically, a rising wedge is much more accurate when when we actually break to the downside, activating the bearish price target. That has a higher success rate of actually hitting the target. It's actually a relatively low success rate for a rising wedge to hit a bullish price target if we break out towards the upside. So ultimately, if we break out here, I'd essentially just no longer look at the rising wedge. Obviously, it's been forming, but it never actually confirmed at all to begin with. And so overall, especially if we see this breakout, Solana is simply just looking bullish. We're still looking at these higher price targets here, continuing the larger bullish trend. And if we're taking a look at XRP on the weekly time frame, despite what happens in the shorter term, on the smaller time frames, technically we still have a massive bearish divergence to watch out for, which is technically still active on the weekly XRP price chart, with higher highs still confirmed in the price, lower highs still confirmed in the weekly XRP RSI. So not much has changed on the weekly time frame over the last couple of days. But if we're taking a look at the daily XRP price chart, what is now happening is obviously a breakout back above this key level right here, which has been acting as short-term resistance and previously was short-term support, and that was sitting in between around 285 to 290. And so obviously when we're talking about just the short term, as in maybe over the next few days, maybe the next 1 week, this is very good news for the price of XRP now that we're back above this key area on the price chart. And now that we're doing this, we're most likely going to retest this level right here based on previous important resistance here, and that's sitting at around $3.08, really in between around $3.08 to $3.10 is the next major area of resistance that I'll now be watching. And if we're taking a look at this daily XRP price chart, technically we also have this descending line of resistance here, currently sitting at approximately $2.99, roughly $3 give or take, and just under $3, acting as a bit of short-term resistance. So as of recording this video, we are currently testing this level, which means there's still the possibility of another little rejection here. We've not yet actually properly confirmed the breakout with a daily candle close back above $3. But with that being said, if we ultimately see ideally a daily candle close above $3 and holding above that level, obviously that would confirm the breakout for the descending triangle pattern, setting up a bullish price target for the descending triangle. And in this situation, that would set up a bullish price target at around $3.82. But it is worth pointing out, of course, we have a lot of key resistance between the price and that price target. And so ultimately, if we confirm this breakout above $3 approximately, I'll just be targeting the next points of resistance, starting at roughly $3.08 to $3.10. And then if we break out above $3.10, I'll be targeting these highs right here, which we'll likely find a lot of resistance at, sitting at roughly $3.30. And as for support, obviously we still have this crucial level of support here, which has been supporting the price a lot over the last few weeks or so, for over a month, in fact, since basically the beginning of August back here, and that's sitting at around 275. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, obviously the longer term trends, the larger price structure, still looking very bullish for the price of Chainlink. For as long as we're holding above $20 to $21, technically we're still in a long-term bullish trend, forming higher lows and higher highs. If we were to see a break below $20 with confirmation, that would be a significant change in price structure, breaking back below a previous significant high. But obviously for now, that has not happened at all, which means we're still looking bullish if we're talking about the longer term situation or the larger price structure. And then of course, during the longer term trend, we can see shorter term bearish trends or pullbacks during the larger price structure. And so obviously that's been the situation over the last couple of weeks, a short term bearish trend during a long term bullish trend. And now we're running into a bit of support at really just underneath $22, around $21.90. But ultimately the next important support is at around $21.50, and below that crucial support here in between $20 to $21. And if we see a little bit more of a bounce here in the short term, expect some resistance at around $23.80, give or take, so just under $24. Expect more resistance at close to $25 and major resistance at close to $27. And if we're taking a look at this daily Chainlink price chart, technically speaking, we've not yet confirmed any invalidation signal to properly invalidate this bearish divergence, which means the bearish divergence on the daily Chainlink price chart is technically still active and can still influence the price of Chainlink. So just keep that in mind. We're not in the clear just yet, but like I've been saying earlier in the video, of course, if Bitcoin ultimately breaks out here in the short term above this key level on the price chart, and especially if the Bitcoin dominance continues a little bit of a pullback while that happens in the price of Bitcoin, if that happens, that will really help Chainlink and a lot of the altcoin market with some more short-term bullish price action. And so definitely keep an eye on what Bitcoin and the Bitcoin dominance are doing if you're in the altcoin market, not financial advice. And of course, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And if you want to actually know how you can trade crypto no matter what the price is doing, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.